Hello everyone. In today's session, what we will be building is an e-commerce website. So first, let me show you a demo of an application. A second. Right. So this is one application that I had built using React. So this is a canteen application that I had built for my college, KJSIEIT. So the concept of building, be it a canteen, be it a e-commerce website, the concept is the same, that you have a list of items being displayed, right? And you can add them or remove them from the cart, right? So some features that it has, first we'll need to log in into our account before we start using this. So what I'm showing you is an app that is currently in production that is being used, right? So we will be building a application which is similar to this one, right? Okay. Now that I have logged into our into my account, I'll start adding things into my cart. As you can see, I added bale, chai, and coffee. And you can see that the number of items in the cart is being displayed in real time because this is being tracked from Firebase, right? Similarly, I can change the number of items in this cart to update my total value. Okay, and then what we have two modes of payment. So one is cash, which will just send this the whole thing to the database as is, and second one is digital, in which we integrate Razorpay, which is a payment portal. You can see order placed successfully, and my backend is a little slow, so the loading screen might take a few seconds to come. Okay, you can see this is the payment portal and this is the total value that I need to pay. So, and this is basic the whole API for of Razorpay for creating a payment. So I'll just pay it using net banking, and I click on pay, and it will open the relevant payment. So if you're doing net banking, it will open your bank's portal. If you're using some sort of a wallet or UPI, it will open the relevant pages. And this is just a demo page. So either I can make a success or a failure. And accordingly, it will make the transaction and add it into my orders, right? So what we will be building today will be a little scaled down version of this, because this is a very huge application which we won't be able to make in the span of 2 hours. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, my server is not starting, so let me just try starting it again. I'll turn off my camera because my PC is going a little slow right now. So what we're trying to use is the API for Razorpay, right? We are trying to use the Razorpay Node.js client for validating our payments. What Razorpay does, it will give us an SDK. We install it into our project using the same npm i Razorpay, as we have been doing with Firebase, Material UI, and all the other libraries. Similarly, we're going to install Razorpay in this way. Okay. Then what we are going to do is we will get some IDs and secrets from Razorpay to validate our instance, that yes, this is the whenever I'm using this application, I want it to connect to my account. So that will be using your ID and secret, right? Okay. Then what we are going to do is we are going to create this order. So the way Razorpay works, okay, and this will be the same way for any other payment portal too, be it Stripe or any other payment portal. What's going to happen is that we will have to first create some sort of an order and then receive a payment on that order. Okay. So the first step is, as you saw, first we will install all the dependencies. We'll create a new Razorpay app. Okay. Then third, we will create an order. And for that, these are the amount and the receipt. So these all values are optional. As you can see, the only mandatory one is the amount and the currency which we are taking. These two are compulsory that we need to give to create an order. Okay. So what we'll be doing, whatever our final cart value will be, will be adding that amount into this. And for right now, we are going to take the currency as INR. Right. Okay. So we are going to use this Razorpay instance and we are going to create this order. So either it will give us an error or it will give us the order. All right. Now, what does this order contain? It contains all of this. So this is the data that we will have on our portal. Okay. Now, next thing that what we need to do is, so over here, there is some sort of backend required. Okay. So for that, um, we will need a backend service which we do not have as of right now. So what you can do is you can create a, let's say, a Node.js backend or a Python backend or a Java backend. The backend can be anything, but we will need a backend server to validate these payments that we are creating. Okay, so how is that going to work? So after you have created your order, right, it's going to give us all these data, or we are going to get this data back, right? So from here, your order ID is the most important one. Okay. Okay. All right. So using that order ID, we have to create a payment. Now, how do we do that? So for that, we will use this Razorpay's script. So this is a checkout script that they have created. So when we want to, when I was making the payment, you saw that it opened up a pop-up, a new window where I saw the whole payment process being generated, right? So how does that happen? So if I click on digital and I click on buy, what it's going to do is this whole thing is coming from this file razorpay.checkout.js. So this is a file that they have created so that we can use it in our applications, right? Okay. Next, what we need to do, we need to give us the key ID, as you remember from our Razorpay's instance, the ID which is of our account. We need to pass that. That's one important variable that we need to pass. And then these are like different amounts and values, and we need to pass the order ID, right? So if you pass the order ID, it will automatically get the amount for you. You do not need to do that manually, and also the currency. So because we have already created the order. Okay. Next thing, we will have a handler which is going to give us the response of it is going to give us the payment ID, order ID, and signature. So by when this handler will give a success, so when I see this, okay, this is what is being displayed using this. All right. And it is going to create a payment for me. This is so whenever I open this a new window like this, it's creating a new payment. So this value will always keep changing because this is my payment ID, not my order ID. Okay, right. And I will have to pre-fill some like contact values for the customer so that they don't have to fill this again and again, right? All right. Then I look at the payment methods. So over here, what's going to happen is I get the payment ID, I get the order ID, and it get a signature. So now after I'm done using some form of payment, right? After the success happens, it is going to capture the payment. But before we get the payment, we will have to verify it. So how does that verification happen? The verification happens on the backend, not on the front end. So that is some processing that the backend has to do. So how do we do the verification? We got three fields, right? We got the payment ID, the order ID, and the Razorpay payment, the Razorpay signature that we got. This one, right? So for that, we got the order ID and the payment ID and the key secret that is already provided to us. So using these three things and the SHA-256 algorithm, we will create a signature on our own, and then we will check it with the Razorpay signature. If both of them are right, then that means that the payment is successful, right? So this is some verification that we have to do, that yes, Razorpay did our it did our payment successfully, and that's then you get your payment back into your own account. Okay, so this is the whole process of Razorpay. This is the way Razorpay implements the payment portal. So there are these 6 steps that it has to do this. Okay, so are there any doubts in the Razorpay payment API? Okay, I'll move on. Okay, so for this application, first we'll go to Firebase and we'll create a new account for our application. E. Okay, after I create the account, I'm going to enable a few services that Firebase provides. So the first one is going to be authentication. Second one is going to be my Firestore database, which is a NoSQL database. For this application, we won't be dealing with the storage services because I'll just be using like free images that are on the internet. But if you want, uh, we did yesterday in our social media application, you can use the storage, Firebase storage, to have your files, whatever the images that you want to display over here in the application. All these items, the photos of these, you can keep them in a storage. But just for the tutorial purposes, I'm going to be using like free images of the internet. Okay. Okay. First, I will turn on the authentication. So for that, I'll have to provide the providers. I'll have to specify which providers I'll be using. So the first one we'll be using is the Google, this one, and for Google provider. So we need to enable that, and we need to give a email for it. Okay. Google authentication is enabled. Second one that I will be adding is the email and password. Um, so let me try this. So I will have to do this manually, but if you click on save, this should enable email and password for you. I will just do this whole process manually. Okay, I have now enabled this manually. Okay, so next service that we are going to enable is the Firestore database. So for this, I'll click on create database. I'll start this in production mode. Then for the location, I'm going to start in Asia South 1 because that's closest server to me. You can choose whichever one is closer to you. And I will click on enable. Yes. So this might take a few minutes because it has to create a whole cloud storage bucket on the server. Okay. So this caused an error for me. It will create it for you. So but for me it will give me an error. So that's why I'm just going to create this manually. Okay, I'll just refresh the page now, and it should be enabled for me. Okay. Next thing that I'm going to change are the rules over here. For the Firestore database, by default, the reading and writing have been turned off. So for that, what we are going to do is we're going to change it to if true, and then we're going to click publish. What that's going to do is it will enable reading and writing from our application, right? So this gave me an error, so I'm just going to do this whole process manually. It should work for you. The people who are who have attended the session from the first session, they might be familiar with these processes by now, um, because this is something that is very like something that's required for every application. Okay, so now the rules have been changed. I changed them manually. Okay, so yeah. So the setup for this project has been done. The services have been enabled. Next thing what we are going to do is we are going to click on this button, and we're going to go to project settings, and we're going to click on web app. You can give this application any name. And we are going to register this application, right? We can ignore this and just click next and finish this. Now you can see that we got this new application or new web app that we created just now. Okay. All right. Now let's come back to our application. It still hasn't started. So this is the boilerplate application that Create React app provides to us. So the first thing that we are going to do is we're going to delete these 4 files: app.test.js, logo, report web vitals, and setup test. We're going to delete these 4 files. Then next, from index.js, we are going to delete these two lines, which is the report web vitals import and the one that's calling it. And from app.js, I'm going to remove the import line for this one, the logo. I'm going to remove the class name of app from this, and I'm just going to empty this. Okay. And in app.css, I'm just going to remove all the styling that's there. Okay, so now the application should look something like just a blank page with app written on it. Okay. So these are like some steps that we are doing for our application. All right. Now the next thing that we will be discussing today is your state management. So let me just open this. I'll open. So in the previous application, you might have noticed that uh, when we were giving the user for creating new these processes, let me just open a diagram so that I can show it to you properly what I'm talking about. Just give me a second. I'm opening the notes. Okay. Drawing and a pen. Okay. So we saw that there was the app, right? And then there were different components inside it, be it the nav bar, right? Or be it the home page, or be it the auth pages, the login, logout pages. There might be different pages. Then in the home page, there were like different posts, right? From different posts or like items that are being displayed, different items that are being displayed, right? And each of these items, they have inside them there are like more different sub components. Okay, there's some sub components that they have, right? Now what happens, we are tracking the authorization in the app. So this is where we are having the user that we are tracking, right? But now if I want to access this user from, let's say, from post or some sub component, for that what I have to do, I'll have to pass this user as props to home, and then that same user will be passed as props to either the post or the items, and then that same user is going to be passed down to the sub component, which will have to which will which is actually going to use it, and none of these like middlemen are going to use any of this, right? So there should be some sort of a solution for this. So React has something called as the context API. What that is going to do is, let me just remove all of these lines that I drew right now. Okay. Now let's say there's this user that I'm tracking in app. What context API is going to do is going to wrap our whole application into an context, right? Now this is a new context that I have created. Okay. Now this user is, instead of being sent down these different components, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this user to my context, and then now this user will become kind of like a global variable. It is not exact, it's not a global variable, but you can relate to it as being something like a global variable. Now instead of like me doing this sending it into like props of different components, which is called as prop drilling. Okay, so if in interview someone asks you, this is something that's important, what is prop drilling? So that is when I said like passing it down different components, that's prop drilling. Okay, how do I avoid that? I have put this user into a different context, so this is kind of like a global context that I have to create. And now this sub component can directly access this user, and it doesn't have to pass through all the components in between. So this is the benefits of using context API. So this is something which we call a state management system. So context API is React's own state management system. One another very popular state management system is Redux. Some people who are very experienced in JavaScript might at least know what Redux is. Okay, that's basically what context API is trying to do. But if I would say in a actual production app, Redux is something that you should prefer using because it has way more features than context API. So you can like look into Redux, but the way I have created the context API, the way I have structured it, it will be very similar to Redux. So if you understand context API that we are going to do today, learning Redux should be relatively easy for you. Okay, so let's get started. Does anyone have any doubt in this? The context API, like how does this work? Does anyone have any doubt in this? Okay, I'll just move forward. So this is our application. So how we are going to, first I will create this context as I said earlier. So for that, in my source folder, I am going to create two new files. So the first new file that I'll be creating is, sorry, my PC is a little slow today. I'm going to call this state provider.js. So what this state provider is going to have. So it's still creating the file. Okay, it's still. I might have to turn a few things off because my PC is not running optimally. Sorry, like my PCs, I don't know like what happened. It's like working really slowly right now. Oh, I might try like shutting a few services down so that like maybe my PC starts loading all of this. Okay, my VS Code just shut down suddenly, so I'll have to restart my React server. Just give me 2 seconds. I'll just stop sharing so that I can like start all of this quickly. Sorry for the problems, like it's just technical difficulty. Okay, so like while the server is being restarted, let's create the state provider. So for that, what we are going to do is there will be 3 things that we will require from React itself, right? 3 things that we will be importing from React. So those 3 things are, first is create context. We will use this to create the context, which I said. Second one is use context, so that we can use this context that we have created. And third is something called as use reducer. So use reducer is something that you can relate to as being something like our use state. So it is similar to your state. Okay. Okay. So first we have to create the state. So I'm going to call it const state context. equals to create context, right? Okay. And also I'm going to export this. Next thing that I require, which I'm going to export, is called as state provider. And sorry, this will be a function which will have an object as the props, and this object will have the following fields: the reducer, then the initial state, so what it was when the application started, what it should be, initial state, and third one is called children. Okay. Now what the state provider is going to do, it is going to return something called as state context dot provider. Okay. And it will be wrapping around the children. Sorry, see, this C should be small. It will be wrapping over the children. So whatever is passed as children, it will wrap around it. Okay. Now this provider, the context provider, requires something called as value. So this value will be use reducer, and this use reducer is going to be coming from reducer and the initial state. I will show how this is going to look. Initial state. Okay. And last thing that we need to create is a custom hook so that we can access the context. So how we are going to do that? I'm going to create a function called as use state value. So as we saw earlier, we have used so many hooks that React provides. We have used use state, we have used use effect, use ref. So these are different hooks that React has made for us, right? Now what we are doing, we are creating a custom hooks. This is some functionality that we want. Okay. And what this is going to do, this is going to provide us with the context. So I'm going to click on use context, and the context that it is going to use is the state context. Okay. So this is enough for the state provider. Okay. This is what the state provider is going to be like. All right. The next file that we need to create is the reducer. So this is a concept from Redux itself, which is called as reducer. So in Redux, how things work, there is something called as the store, then there is something called as the reducer, and then there is something called as the action. Okay. So the store is basically like the single source of truth for all the data. Okay. The reducer is the one which will understand what are you trying to do. And last is the action. So this is just a function that it needs to perform. So whenever something happens, what action needs to be performed, so that will be performed on the store. So we will change that single source of truth whenever we want to deal with this. So we are going to be using the same concept. So the first thing that we need to do is, in the reducer, we will have the initial state, right? So I'm also going to export this, export const initial state, right? And as of right now, I'll be having my user. This is the state that we'll be using for our current application, and it will have a cart. Okay, so by default, the cart will be empty. So this is the state that we will be able to access all over our application. Right. Okay, coming back. Okay, next thing that we are going to do is we are going to create these reducers. So I'm going to create this function called as reducer, and it will have two parameters. The first one is the state and second one is the action. Okay, and over here this is the switch case. So this is the reducer. So we are going to do it on the action dot type. I will try to see that what kind of action is being done. Okay, so over here we will create like different cases of actions. So what should happen in what case? So the first one, if we try to set the user, we are trying to change the user, and over here, this is where the action part comes. We will do something to the user, right? Similarly, there will be another case called as set cart, and similarly, we will do something to the cart. I will break out of this, and by default, what should happen? It should return the state as it is. There shouldn't be any changes, right? Okay, so now let's export default. We'll also export this function out so that we can use this. Okay, now let's add the functions. So what should happen to the user? Okay, so these functions should return something that after the action the state will be like. Okay, so what I'm going to return is the new state. So for that I will spread the current state. So whatever the current state is, I want that, but I'm going to update the user field to action dot user. So this user will come along with the action. Okay, we will see exactly how all of these things work. Sorry, you don't need breaks because we are returning, so by default it will break out of this. Next, return. Similarly, we are going to take the current state and we are going to update the cart to the action dot cart. All right, okay, and by default what it should do, it should just return the state as is. So how I'm going to do that? Return the state as is. Whatever the current state is, just give me that if there is no action like for what I'm trying to do. All right, okay, so this is the setup that was required. Okay, now let's come to our index.js file. Now we are going to wrap the whole application with this. So how we are going to do that? I'm going to wrap the whole application as state with my state provider, right? And I'm going to close this thing. Okay. Next thing, I need to provide it like a few props. The first one is the initial state. Where is it going to come from? It's going to come from the reducer file. This is the initial state that we define. Next one is the reducer. So this is the reducer that we created. Okay, and save. So now what's going to happen is now the whole application has been wrapped with the context, and now we can work with we can access all the values, and we can even update the state using this custom hook that we created. Okay, okay, user is not defined over here. User is not defined, right? So by default this should be null, right? Okay, I forgot to put the default values. Okay, now let me show you how this thing works. So I'll just do JSON dot parse, and I'm going to show you the user as well as the cart. I'm just going to show you the current state as it is. Okay, so how we are going to do that? We are going to use our custom hook, which will give us a state and a dispatch function. Okay, And this is going to be using our custom hook, which is use state value and call this. Okay. Let's see what is displayed on the application now. Okay, let me refresh the page. Wait a second, some sort of an error has occurred. There shouldn't be any error. I'll try refreshing again. I'll try destructuring it into user and cart and just try displaying the cart itself. Nothing else. Okay, so the state provider is correct. I take the reducer, I take the initial state, and I take the children. I take all of them over here, initial state and reducer. And I'll use this use reducer, and it will have the initial state and the reducer itself. And for this, I'm going to use this context, right? The reducer is correct. Localhost 3000. I might have to restart the server because like code wise nothing is wrong. There might be some like caching issues that might be occurring. I'll just restart the server till then. If anyone has any doubt, like how everything is happening. Okay, so I'll just like explain it once again. What I'm doing is I'm going to wrap the whole application with the state provider. Okay, and what does the state provider take? It takes the initial state and the reducer as the properties. Okay, now using the initial state and the reducer, okay, it is going to give me a provider and the value will be a use reducer. What a use reducer is, as you can see, it is an alternative to use state. It will take an initial state and then there will be a reducer. Okay, that reducer will change your state according to the commands that you have written over there, right? So let's look at our reducer. So what this reducer will do, it will take a state and it will take an action. So state will be the current state. Okay, when it starts, it will have the initial state, right? Afterwards, the state will keep on changing. And the second thing that it takes is the action. Then according to the action, it is going to decide which like which kind of change I need to do on the state, right? So you can see if I do case set user, then it will update the user in our state. Similarly, if I try to update card, it will do this. And if it doesn't recognize any command, it's just going to return the state as is. Okay. So that's what it's going to do. So it will give me a output using which I can read and write. It is similar to use state. over here, you can see I get the current state and I get a function to update my state. So this is something called as dispatch function, to which I'll pass the action that I need to run, right? Okay. Let's see if this thing works again, or is there some error in this? Right. Any doubts in this? How the context API works? Right. And the application is still throwing an error. Okay. Okay, so basically what's happening is it cannot parse this thing. All right, let's just try just typing this out. So does the error go away? Okay, so there is some error in the JSON parsing method, not in our function. So JSON dot, sorry, not parse. I need to give it stringify. That was the issue. I was giving it this one. So I'll give it the user and the cart. Okay, let's have a look. Yes, so you can see it is displaying me the current state, right? Okay, now let's try doing this. Over here, I'm going to add a button, okay, and update state. What this is going to do, I will do the on click, and when I click on this, what it should do, it should dispatch an event, okay? And what this dispatch function will look like, it will have the action that I'm going to pass, and the action will have one field, that is the type, right? So that's what we were defining in our reducer, action.type, according to which we will decide what we need to do, right? Okay, so coming back to app type, so let's try to set the user, okay? And second one, I need to if I'm trying to set the user, what should be passed along with the action? It should be user. So I'm going to give it a user of, let's say, name equal to Vedanshu, right? And let's see how this thing runs. Okay, if I click on update state, you can see it updated the global state, the state in the context right now. Okay, and we can now read this. So what we need to do, okay, this one is more for explanation, but when you're trying to use this in your application, what you need to do, you just need to take these two files and you just need to put them into your own projects, and you just need to create the reducer and initial state according to your own needs. What function should it run, what cases it should run, okay? So that is something that will be unique to your own application, but otherwise this file will be as is and the wrapping will be as is, okay? And when you're trying to use this, this will be your state and this will be the dispatch function, which, as you can see, it is quite similar to our use state, right? There is the uh, state itself, which we use for reading. Then there is the set state, which is similar to the dispatch function, right? And we give some initial state to it, but for this work, we have already provided it, right? So you can see the similarities between the two. Is this clear? This is a very important topic. Like when you go build like large scale projects, you need something that will manage your state, like on a like application level, which we are doing right now. There should be some doubts that are coming, like because this is a difficult topic. Okay. So now that we have set the context API, now we can freely use this as we want. Okay. So now let's just start building the application. Okay. Um, in our application, the for few libraries that we will be requiring, let's install those. So npm I Firebase. Then second one is React Router DOM for routing between pages. Then we need the material UI libraries for our styling. It requires like 3 different libraries, so you can get them from mui.com, and you click on get started and go to the installation process. I'll paste the libraries what need to be installed into the chat box. So these are the 3 libraries that we need to install if you're using this. And I think, yeah, that's it. These are all the libraries that are required. I pasted them in the chat box. Okay. So while these are running, I'll start building the application. Okay, for those people who have not attended the previous sessions, there will be one more package that you will have to install on a global level, like over your whole machine, which is called as Firebase tools. So what this is going to provide us with is the Firebase CLI. So CLI is command line interface. So these tools we can use for our Firebase, handling our Firebase from the command line. Okay. Just run that command if you don't have Firebase installed on the global level. Firebase tools, not Firebase. Firebase is this Firebase is local to our project. Okay. Let's start building. So our app is going to have a router. It is going to have a router which is coming from React Router DOM. React Router DOM. And there is something called as browser router, which will look at the URL on your web browser. Okay. And I'm going to give this a alias of router. Then next thing that we will need is a nav bar. So this is a custom component that we will be building. Then the next one, the content, the main content of the pages, that will change according to the route. So that's why I'm going to be using the switch component from the React Router DOM library, so that I can go between pages. Okay. And switch, I'll import that too. Okay. Next, I'm going to match all of these. So I'll be using root. Then I'll give the path. So this is for the home page, and it should be an exact match. And over here, we will display the home component. We will build all of these components in a moment. Right. Similarly, we'll be building a few more pages. But before that, I need these pages will be centered in the pages, centered. So that's why I'll add some styling for them, which will have a width of 300 if it was on a phone, and it will have 500 if it is on a laptop screen. Sorry. Yes. So this is what we'll be having, and another value that we will be requiring, different more stylings that we will require are, we need the position to be fixed, sorry, not fixed, it needs to be absolute. Then from top it needs to be 50%, and from left it needs to be 50%, and it will have a transform of translate minus 50% and minus 50%. And over here we are going to be displaying the two different routes, which is the login route, and next one is the sign up route. And for both of them, there will be the login component and the sign up component. Now let's create these components in our files. Okay. So for that, I'm going to create a new folder called as components, and let's build all of these. First one is home.js. Then there is login.js. Sign up.js. And I need to import box from material UI. And the last one is navbar. Okay, I have to create navbar too. .js and refc. Okay, so let's first import all of these. So navbar come from components, home will come from components, then the login page will come from components, and sign up will come from components. Okay, I can't see sign up for some reason. Sorry, I had a typo over here. Sign up.js, and both of them okay. Now it should get the import properly. Yep. Okay. Now let's first build the navbar before we do anything else. Okay. So the navbar is going to be coming from material UI app bar. It will have a position of sticky. Then inside this, there will be a toolbar. And inside this, we will have different a few different things. Let's have a look. First that we need is an icon button. So for this, I'll have a styling of margin right of 2. Okay, and next I will need some on-click events for this. So if people have attended yesterday's session, they might know how does history work. So I'm going to use history from React Router DOM. Okay, and if I click on this one, sorry, not on focus, it should be on click. On click, what it should do is it should do history dot push to the home page. So this will take me back to the home page. Okay, and inside this I have to display a logo. So let me just bring the logo from my other folder. Logo.svg. This is the new file that I have gotten. So let's just bring this. So for that, I'm going to click on import logo from // because it's in the parent folder. From that, I'm going to get logo.svg. And let's have a look. How does our page look now? Okay, while it's compiling, I will add the other pages. Okay, it came. So let's have a look. How does the page look? Could not create this. All right. Okay, for importing this, I need to import it as a React component first, and then I'll rename this to logo. So now I can use it. So this is something that we need to make sure that whenever we are importing a SVG file, we need to first create it into a React component, and then using as, we can give it an alias for whatever we want. Okay. Let's come back, and now you can see we have the logo available. Now let's add all the other fields. So that being the different buttons that we'll be having, different descriptions. The first one we'll be having is just a typography, which will again link back to the home page. So this one will come from, and when I click on this this text, it should link me back to the home page. And when I click on this, it will again scroll back. So in case we are on some different scrolling, and I'm just removing the styling that comes with as a default link. Okay, so let's look at it. This is what it's going to look like. When I click on it, it will get me back to the home page. All right. Next thing that we'll be doing is the cart button, right? For that, what's going to happen is we'll go to the cart page. So right now we don't have the cart page, and inside this, I'm going to be displaying something called as badge. Okay, and I'll be displaying the shopping cart icon. So where will we get this from? We'll get this from MUI.com, material UI, like the material icons package. So we'll come over here and we'll search for the shopping icon. So this has a lot of icons. So from here we'll see like how do we get this thing. Okay, but for that first we'll have to install this package. We missed this package during installation. Let's install this one, npm I and the icons package. And then let's find the how we should import this. So the shopping cart icon we here. This is how you do it. And let's keep it imported so that we can use it later on. Shopping. Shopping cart icon. Okay. Now this badge will have, so this is another material UI component. So it has this property called as badge content. And this will display a number. Okay, so let's just display 2 and see how does this look on the page. Yes, let this thing be installed and then we will be able to see the icon. Till this thing is being displayed, we'll add the other functionalities. So another one that we will require is a button for the sidebar. Okay, so for that, what we are going to be creating is a sidebar, right? As you saw in the application, we have the cart. Let this thing load again. We have the cart, right? And when we add some something to the cart, it will show that number over here, right? And we need to create this button so that we can open a sidebar over here. Okay, now let's do that in our application. Menu icon. It's over here. All right. So for that, I have to create something called as a drawer. This comes from Material UI. I give it an anchor as right so that it opens on the right of my screen. Okay. This will have, or this will decide whether it's open or not using some Boolean value. So we'll create a state for open. Okay. Let's create that. Use state. Open. And initially it should be false because we don't want it open by default. Okay, we might have, so auto import is not working, so we'll have to import this manually. From React, we're going to have something called as use state. Okay. What else does this drawer require? Then it requires whenever I close this, what should happen? So when I close this, it should go ahead and it should change, update the open state back to false, right? Now, what should this drawer display? It will display a div and it should have a width of 250. Then I need to display a few items, right? So for that, what I'm going to do is there's a lot of items that need to be displayed. So for that, I'm going to create an array which will be for my own convenience. So I'll just take this thing so that I don't need to create it again and again, right? So how does this work? So there are like different menu items. So what icon it should display, what text it should display, when I click on it, where it should take me to, and does it how does it decide it needs to be displayed, right? So these are different things that should happen. Okay. So these are these four icons we'll have to import. So home icon and all these over here. I will paste them over here. These are the imports for all the icons. And okay, now what we are going to do is we are going to loop through this items. Okay. And we are going to display it on the sidebar. So we're going to loop through this. It will give a singular list item and it will give me a index, which is the key, right? Then using this, I'm going to say that if the list item dot display, so where we decide like should this thing be displayed or not. So if this is true, I'm going to display something which is list item which comes from material. This is going to be a button and it will have a key because when you're looping through items, you should give each one of them unique key so that React knows how to handle them. And when we click on it, there should be some handler, right? We'll fill this handler later on. Okay. Did this not import properly? Okay, I missed one bracket somewhere over here. Let me just remove this and check what did I miss? Where did I miss this bracket? All right, I think I missed one bracket over here. And for this one also it's okay. Okay, it should work. Let's try this again. I think I messed up the brackets right now. So there will be list items and there will be keys that will be provided. And for each one of them, if the list item is supposed to be displayed, then I will render a list item. This will be a button. Then it will have a key. Then there will be an on-click handler. So for right now, we have not put this thing. But what that's going to do is, let's just put the handler. So it's going to close the sidebar. Second thing it's going to do is it's going to redirect me wherever the list item dot to is, right? It's going to redirect me to that page. And it's also going to bring me back to the top of the page. So scroll to 0,0. Okay. Then inside each list item, there should be two things, which is the list icon. And what will that list icon be? It's going to be my items icon, right? Okay, and last one that we need, it is list item icon, not list icon. Sorry, I had a typo. Then next one, the list item text. And what this is going to display is going to display in bold the item text. So list item dot list text, right? Now let's see how does this look on our application. Okay, so for that, we need to first access the user. So this user we will take from the context. So how do we do that? Using use state value, right? Const, and this will be an array which we destructure into the state and the dispatch function. And in the state, I want the user. These are the things that I want. Okay, now let's try this out. Yep, you can see all of them are available, all the icons. And when I click on this, it opens the sidebar. And let's just improve the styling over here because both of them are next to this one. So this, I'm just going to add over here a style of margin left of, let's say, auto. Okay, this didn't work. So I'm just going to wrap all of this into a div and then do it. Okay, so the reason why this was happening is this should have been outside the topography, whereas this was accidentally put inside it. Let's see this again. Okay, now it's proper. Right. And we can see that this is being displayed correctly. We get the badge also properly being displayed with the number. Okay. So instead of doing this, instead of hard coding this, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the card that's coming from our context, and whatever the value is in the card, we're going to fill it according to it. Okay. So where is it? Okay. Where did I put this one? Shopping over here, right? So first, what we'll check, is there a cart? Okay, is the cart full? So this is a ternary operator. So if it is true, there is something in the cart, I am going to get the keys of the cart. So basically, how many of them are there? And I'm going to check the length. Sorry, the length. Otherwise, I'm just going to display 0, right? So right now the cart is empty, so it should not display something. If the cart had something, so let's just update the initial state and give cart something, right? So it should update this because there are 1 items in the cart, so this should be updated. Okay, let's refresh and see. Now you can see there is 1 item in the cart. Okay, so this is how this is going to work. Let's reset this back to null, to empty. Sorry. Yes. Right. And the last thing that we need to add in the drawer is a logout button. There's another logout button that's required, which will be displayed if there is a user. So it's the same as all these items, but it required a little different implementation, which I'll show you in a moment. So I didn't put it in the loop. So it's the same. If there is a user, then I'm going to display the list item. So it is not going to redirect somewhere. So that's why it's a little different from this one. So it's a button, and when I click on it, it's going to sign out of my authorization. So right now we are not dealing with authorization. So let's keep that aside. Yes, and let's have a look. So right now I'm not logged in. That's why I can only see these 3 pages. Okay, now let's build the authorization. Coming to register page. So register page as of right now it's empty. This is the sign up page. Okay. For the sign up page, what we require is we will be displaying a card. Okay, card is not importing. Might have to do this manually. Okay, no issues. Import card from add material, right? Okay, next from card, then I need a card header, which will have a title of sign up. Oh, this is exactly what we did yesterday, so I'm not going to build this again. You can have a look at yesterday's session if you want to see like how we built this. But it's going to be exactly the same thing, so I'm just going to take it from yesterday's code so that we can move to the other section of our code. Okay, you can have a look at it from the repository. If someone from CSI's team can put the repository link so they can have a look at yesterday's content. Okay, and let's import everything that's required. All right. Where's the sign up? Okay. Next, this will be the utils folder, and in that will, sorry, not utils folder, the utils file. Which will be having the Google sign-in process and also how to create a random integer. Okay. Okay. Before we do all of this, we need to first set up the Firebase. So we'll create a firebase.js file so we can access all of these things. For that, we'll go back to our console, the Firebase console over here. We'll come back to our project settings. We will go to our apps. There's a section called as your apps, the one that we initialized, right? And we're just going to copy all of this code over here. So I'm just going to click copy and I'm going to paste it out over here. What this is going to do is it's going to initialize my application to be used by Firebase. Okay. Then a few other things that we require. So we're using the Firestore. So there is a function called as get Firestore. And the second one, we are going to be using auth. So we need to do get auth using the app. All right. So we created this and we need to export both of them, db and auth, so that it can be used by all our files. Okay. Now they come from the upper folder. Yep. Fix the import and it should work. And let's check, can we like register as a user now? Let's try creating a new user. So yeah, so this is our sign up page. Let's create a new user. Let's first try using email and password. So we created the user. As you can see, we got redirected to the home page. Let's check, or did we get this one created? In the authentication session, you can see that I created the user, and we also created in the database some files relating to the user. So that's the avatar, email, and the name of the user. Similarly, let's try for Google sign in. Let's come over here. Let's go to register page and try register with Google. I'm signing in using my Google account, and you can see I again got redirected. So over here, let's check. Yes, I got the Google account, and even in the authentication, I can see I created this new user. So sign up works. Similarly, let's just create the login page. Okay, what we are going to do, we are going to take these functions from auth, sign in with email and password, and the sign in with Google one. And this is something that we have already done yesterday. So if anyone has any doubts on how the authentication is working, you can go and check yesterday's session. All right, so we added the login function. Let's just test out the login using email and password. If I click on login, it will take me back to the home page. So that means it has correctly done the signing in. All right. So next thing, we need to check like who the current user is. So for that, we have to set up a use effect, right? Because we need to check who the current user is. So for that, let's keep the effect clear for that. There will be no dependencies. Okay. So the effect is going to give us an unsubscribe function, which we are going to call in our cleanup function. So who's going to call this? We are going to do on auth state change. So this is going to keep track of our authentication changes, right? So we need to first give it the authorization app. Okay. Then what we need to do is this is going to give us a auth user, and using this auth user, what I'm going to do is, so if there is an auth user, that means there is a logged in user, else, so that means there is a logged off user. Okay. So I'm now going to dispatch, I'm going to create a dispatch event. Okay. The action will be set user. So over here, this is how I'm going to set the user. So for that, I'll be having user as action.user. Sorry, not action.user. User is my auth user, the one that we got right now, right? This should be type. Okay. Similarly, if I have logged off, then I should dispatch an event of set user, and I should set my user to null. Okay, and import use effect. Okay, so now we are keeping track of user in our log state. Now you can see that yes, now it shows me according to the current user, right? So let's just do this, and let's add the functionality to the logout button. So that was in the nav bar. When we click on the logout button, we should sign out using our authorization. Okay. Okay. So what that's going to do for us, auth is not defined. Okay. Forgot to import it before using it. Let's come back to the application. It shows me currently logged in. So I'm just going to log out. So now the user is null. Let's log back in. Okay, I'm logged back in. So all the authentication works properly. Login, logout, sign up, everything works as expected. Okay. Next thing that we are going to do is we are going to build up all the items that are going to be displayed. So now how is that going to work? In our database, there's going to be a collection of items. All right. And each item is going to have the following fields, which are there's the name of the product. So let's say it is a white t-shirt. Then there is the price. There's going to be a number. Let's say it is of 100 rupees. And it's going to have an image URL. And let me get the image URL. Okay, my Firebase is not connecting. What should I do? If a Firebase is not connecting, you can see that have you properly followed all the steps for Firebase initialization. Okay. Bhavika asks, can you explain how to program the logout button? Okay, so for the logout button, what we are going to do is we are going to use the sign out function, and we're going to pass the auth. Okay, so that's just going to empty. So basically how Firebase stores your authentication is, it has some cookies over here that it puts on your website. So you can see in google.com, there is something called as cookies. And over here, they have a lot of like values over here, which contains all your user files. So when you log out, it is going to clear all of them. So that's how they keep track of it. So when you click on your sign out function, what it's going to do is it's going to clear all of those cookies. And when you sign in or log in, it's going to fill those cookies with your current um, authorized session. All right. Okay. Why set user to null? So, okay, I'll just show you how this auth user looks like. So let me just console log this auth user. Let's come back to the application and see the console log. Okay, so this is my auth user. Now, how does this person look like? It has all these fields. It has some access tokens. It has some authorization fields. It has a display name, the email, so photo URL, metadata. So in the metadata, when was this created? When was the last login of this user? All of there's a lot of data that you can get about the user from over here, right? And the UID, most important UID. So that's how you Google Firebase keeps track of like the difference between each user using the UID. All right. So this all is required, especially the UID. This is required when we are trying to create anything which references to the user. Okay. So for that, we will need the user data. But after the person is logged in, we don't want, after the person is logged in, we don't want to store all of this data, right? Because this data in someone else's hand, it is problem. It can cause problems. That's why we set it back to null. So let me just log out, and you'll see what I'm saying. So okay, I forgot to add a console log over here. I'll just instead move this up so it always shows it. Okay, right. So now it's showing null. So I don't get access to all of this data anymore. So in the current session, I don't know who the current user is. I don't know who the previous user is. Okay. So that's why we set it back to null. How to hash password. So that is something that happens in the backend. So Firebase is handling all of that. The reason why we are using Firebase is it is a backend as a service. Okay. So all the email handling, provider handling, the Google OAuth, like hashing of the password, all of that is being handled by them. We don't need to deal with all of that. Okay. I'll continue. Yes, I was filling these values. So I'm just going to take a few moments to fill the t-shirt like image URLs that I have stored. Right. Just give me 2 minutes. Till then, if anyone else has like any other doubts, they can keep asking over here. Okay, I just added 3 items that we can at least test it out. So for our current application, we can, like set up an admin side where you can, add or remove all of these items. So you can do all of that, but for right now I'm just keeping it little simple, so that okay. Question is, can you explain the functioning of Firebase in brief? So what Firebase does? Okay, Firebase is a backend as a service. So anything that a backend can do can be done using Firebase. So you want authentication, you got authentication. You have so many different providers. You got email, password, Google. There are more providers that you can add. You can add Facebook, you can add Google Play, Homes, Microsoft, GitHub, Apple, Yahoo, using the phone number, or you want an anonymous sign-in. Anything that you want can be done. Okay. So that's one thing, one service. Okay. And you can even, like, send OTPs, you can send password reset mails. There's a lot of things that you can do using this, which when you try to build all of this own, yes, it is possible. Yes, it will be more secure when you do it, because you will be storing all the password, not Google. But the thing is, when you're building something to production, I have built authentication myself in backend, and all of this takes a lot of time to build. Okay, even I have a lot of experience. I still have, because authentication is something that is always changing. Every time I try authentication, there is something new that happens, and I change the way how I'm implementing it. Okay, whenever I just want to build a proof of concept, I just use Firebase authentication, because I don't want to deal with all of this complicated stuff, because all whatever is required, that is being handled by Google. Okay, so this is one advantage. Second is Firestore database. So this is a NoSQL database. So you can use this, or another popular alternative is your MongoDB. That's also another very popular NoSQL database. So let's see why I'm saying use Firestore. If you're trying to build like a small startup, or it's a personal project, is because just in free. So this whole project is in the free plan. You can go ahead and upgrade to a Blaze plan, where it's like a pay as you go. It includes the free usage, but then if you use more of the resources, you pay, right? That's very fair. But look at the free quota. I get 20,000 writes per day, 50,000 reads per day, and 20,000 deletes per day. You tell me, if you're building a personal project, are you ever going to go above this? No. If you're building a very small application, let's say there are, like, 50 to 100 users, this is never going to like peak. Even if it is going to peak, just go look at the price of this thing. Like, it's basically, like, I think like some 6 rupees for like 100,000 reads, and like 13 rupees for 100,000 writes, which is very cheap. So this is something like the whole scaling is being done by them. So that's another reason why I use this. Then I haven't used real-time database, so I can't comment about that. Then there's storage. Storage gives you 5 GB of storage for free whenever you are 5 GB. Yes, 5 GB when you're trying to use it. So that's also very generous. Then last one, which I have used. I haven't used any other services. You can see there's so many different services. Hosting. This gives me free, like, static website hosting. So why should I not use it? I build a lot of projects in React. It takes me like after I'm done with the project, I just run npm run build. It will create a build folder for me, and I'll just run Firebase deploy. So it's just going to take all my project files, and it's going to make a website out of it. So this is a production website which I'm running on Firebase. Why should I not? This will give me free hosting. I will never like exceed it hosting limits. Why shouldn't I? Yes. So these services I have personally used, so I can suggest, yes, they are really good. There's another called as functions. So as I said, Firebase is a backend as a service. So when I said, like, for Razorpay, you need to do some authentication on your part, verification that the payment was successful. So for that, you will have to create a Node.js server. You have to write all the handlers and stuff, right? So you can create create all of those using functions. So what this will do, it will create basically like a Node.js server of its own, which is running separately from all of this. Okay. So for our application, what's the only need that which Firebase doesn't provide by default is the Razorpay verification, right? So that thing, for just for that thing we can create two functions. One is for creating the payment and second one is the verification of payment. So all of that we can do using this, but that doesn't come in the free plan. You need to switch to a paid plan. But I have heard about like people using this. Okay, then next question is, um, VS Code is not suggesting the import when that happens. Like VS Code, sometimes it might be your PC is slow. You can see like even while I was coding, sometimes it gives me the autocorrect, sometimes it doesn't give me. Sometimes it's the wrong import also. So that also happen. Firebase is best, seconded, MongoDB is better. Yeah, MongoDB is better if you are like trying to build like a production level app. But for like such a small project, Firebase is well and good. Yeah, MongoDB, because you're doing everything from by yourself, there's a lot more control that you have, which is always like better if you're trying to build something complicated. Okay, npm run build. So okay, what happens is we have created this website. Now let's say this is all running on localhost. This is running on my own laptop. I want to take this website and I want to put this onto the internet so that everyone can use it, right? So for that, I will first need to create an optimized build for it, because this is a development software. Because see, whenever I change something over here, it will like, hot reload over here. So all this is being run using, see, Webpack dev client. So it's a Webpack development server. That's what it's running on, this whole website. Because of which, like, I save the file over here, I can see the changes over here, right? That quickness is because of it's a development server. But when you're on a production server, you don't want all of these debugging features and like fast reloading. So that's a lot of extra features that it removes, and then it will optimize the file, optimize your whole project to be served on the internet, right? So it's going, you can see our previous sessions over there. We have built those files, and using that we have deployed all of them. Okay. Mm, when will the session end? So basically, what's left is, okay, we got the items filled, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get all of them, and then I'm going to display all of their prices. Second one, I'll add some functionality to add all of them to the cart over here, right? Then from that cart, I'm going to build a cart page. Over here, it's going to just take all my items, and then it will create like a invoice, a receipt page, from which it will calculate that, and then you can do the payment. So all of that, like all the features that now I'm going to be building are discussed in like previous sessions. There's nothing new that I'm going to be doing now. I did all the explanation like at the start of the session. Um, so if you want, I can continue building this. If not, the finished source code will be put onto the GitHub repository later. So you can you can put it in the chat box. Like, do you want me to continue, or like, is it okay if I end the session right now? If we're ending the session right now, I can take like a few like ask me anything, like whatever you want to know about web development, React, hosting. So we can conduct a small Q&A session for like 10-15 minutes. So you can put all of this into the chat box. What do you want to do? Okay, continue. All right, I'll continue. All right. Right. So let's create another use effect. So the reason why I'm creating two different use effect, because this whole thing is only basically the focus of this single effect is to track my authorization changes, right? Am I signing in? Is the user changed? Like all of that. I'm looking at that. So I want to track the items over here, right? So for that, I'm going to create a new user effect. Oh, sorry. I was supposed to create this in the home page, not over here. I have to create this in the home page, not over here. Right. Right. Alright. A use effect. Okay. This will also not have any dependencies. The effect will be, it is going to um, so there are two choices, like either we can listen to the documents like real time, but I think for the current application, it doesn't make sense. So I'm just going to fetch all of them. For that, the command is get doc. Um, okay, autocorrect is not working. See, that happens sometimes. Let's say on snapshot. Okay, my autocorrect has stopped working for some reason. Let me just check that. Get doc. Okay, I'll have to go see the function name because I don't remember the exact name for the function. Firebase get doc. Right. So whenever you get confused, please learn how to read documentation, because if you can't read documentation, like nothing will happen. If you remember in the second session where the to-do session I was conducting, uh, I had built this whole boot camp a month back, right? So right now the Firebase data, the API has been updated from version 8 to version 9. So this is different style of creating the queries, right? So because of that, I had to do some live debugging in the session. You can go watch the second session where I'm doing all of this, because how much ever you know, there's always going to be there's always going to be something that's not going to work. So you need to go learn how to, read documentation, because that's the only thing that can save you. Okay. Anything happens, if you can read documentation, you can do anything. All right. I'm going to get the documentation from the collection. I'm going to pass it my DB. Okay, DB I also have to import manually. Here I'll import the DB and I need the items. Okay. You can see what's going to happen. I'm going to get some query snapshot back, right? Learn how to read all of this documentation. Okay. So it's going to return me a promise, which is going to have a query snapshot. Okay. Then using this query snapshot, I'm going to create let items is equals to, first I'll keep it empty. Then I'm going to loop through the snapshot for each. So each item, I'll have each item, and then I'm going to return. What am I going to return? I'm going to spread the item dot data. So each and every item over here in our database, each and every item, I'm going to spread that data. Okay. Sorry, I'm not going to return. I'm going to push all of that into this array called as items. Okay. Let's just have a look at this. Sorry, brackets. Yeah. And let's just see how does this look like. Items. Fact. Use effect is not defined. Okay, yeah, you can see now it has brought all three of the files back to me, right? And I got the data present in it. Okay, now how will I display all of them? I'm going to have something called as items items.js. So this is how all of them are going to look like. So RAFCE. Reading documentation is boring. Let me tell you, like if you can read documentation, um, so this API used to look something like this in the previous version. You can see web version 8, it used to look something like this, and it is completely changed into something like this. If I wouldn't have read the documentation, I would have been stuck like figuring things out for, I would say, at least like 5 to 6 hours. But I read the documentation, and in 2 minutes, I knew what all I needed to change. Okay. They also have like an upgrade guide. So I can see, okay, these are the changes that I need to do when I'm moving from version 8 to version 9. Okay. So yes, things will happen. Yeah. When you switch from a manual car to an automatic car, there's going to be like some changes that you need to face. But once you get used to automatic car, you're not going to go back to a manual car, right? It's the same concept. Okay, there's a card, and then in the card content, I'm going to have one image. Sorry, I'm going to have a div. Just let me look. That's just like some styling that I need to put in over there. Okay, there's no card content. Yes. Yes. So there's going to be a div, okay, which is going to have flex on it, and it will be like a point to flex, and it will put everything into the center. And in that, I'm going to display an image. Okay, an image, and it will have like this styling on it. All right, and the source will be something that comes from my props. So for that, let's create some props. Let's see what are the things that are being returned from our database. We have these three things. So these three strings should be like there. So there's the image URL. What else? There's the name and the price. Name and the price. So these three things we will be taking. Image URL. In the source, we'll put the image URL. And in the alt tag, we'll put the name of the product. Okay. Let's have a look at this. We need to first render this over here. Okay, we got these items. We need to put this into a state. Let's do that. Items, and it will be empty initially. All right. So after I'm done with this, I will set items instead of console logging them. Okay, I have the items, and over here, let's just show these things. So items dot map. So I'll get an individual item. So for each individual item, let's just get the key also because we'll need that. So for each individual item, I'm going to be displaying items, right? Sorry, over here. Let's import this, right? And what it will require. So I'm going to use another syntax because item is going to go as it is. So I'm just going to open item over here and then send it, because it's the same keys. And also I want to give it key because I'm looping through this, right? It's done. And new state import. Okay, for some reason my React imports have stopped working. New state is not defined. We have defined it. Let's just refresh the browser. Okay, for some reason we are not displaying this as of right now. Let's check again. Oh, we forgot to save the file. Does this work now? Okay. I just feel like there's something come away. Okay. Maybe this spread syntax is not working. I'll just put it manually. There's the name, price, and the image URL. So name equal to name, price equal to price, and image URL equal to image URL. If for some reason this is not coming, let me see. JSON.stringify. It comes. Okay, we do get the images, but for some reason this is not being displayed. Oh, right. For that, we'll have to return this. If you don't return it, it's not going to be visible. Right. Okay, these are too big. Let's add some styling to like put this back into size. Max width, max this thing. Okay. Put this whole thing into a div. Okay. Now it's working. Now we have the images, right? Images are being displayed. Let's just add a little bit more style so that it's not so much crowded. I'll add some margin on the top and some padding on the side. Okay. Yeah. So it looks a little better now. Okay. Now let's add all the other information, that's the text and stuff. I'll just add a little bit more padding on the side. For that, I'll be using container. Container, and the max width will be SM. Right. That's too small. All right, yeah, this size is perfect. Okay, now let's add the text about the name and the price and everything. Okay, so for that we will be having something called I'll add a div here, which will have a style of flex point 8. Here I'll add some card content, some typography, and the price. Okay, let's save this. Okay, now we can see at least like information about all of them. Now what we can do, we need to add the buttons to add them to the cart, right? Or we need to add all of that. Okay, so for that, what we require? We'll have to know like how much quantity they want. So one, we will need to keep track of that quantity. Initially, everything will be 0, right? Um, Next, what else we need to keep track of? Quantity, price, total we will calculate from that. And I think that's it. That's what we need to keep track of. All right. So, okay. So I'll add a button over here, or I'll add one minus button, one plus button, and the quantity. Okay. So it will be a button, and it will have a minus, similarly a plus, and a typography of quantity. So that quantity will come from here. You state. Okay, this thing works. Let's just wrap all three of them in one div so that they're in one line. Okay. Okay. I'll just take a break for like 2 to 5 minutes. So if anyone has any doubts, they can put it in the chat box. I'll be back in 2 minutes. Okay, I'm back. So now let's deal with the quantity of these items. Okay, first let's add one more over here, which is another, no, sorry, not over here. On the next line, I want to add another typography, which is going to be total is equals to, so I'm going to add the totaling over here only directly, which is quantity into price. So total is 0. Okay, but we don't want to display this like for everything, right? So what we're going to do is over here, we are going to just add one button, which is, right, close this, add to cart. Okay, what we are going to do is instead, we are going to make this component a little reusable. We're going to add something called as is cart. So this is going to be a Boolean value. Okay. Now what we're going to say is that if this is a cart, so then only display all of this section. So how do we do that? Is cart and this. We need to wrap this into a React fragment because it always expects to return one React component, not multiple. Okay. So if it is cart, then only see. Otherwise, you will only see add to cart, or similarly remove from cart. These two buttons, and these both will be like depending is it already in the cart or not. So we will do that accordingly. Okay. Next one. Similarly, these two should only be displayed if it is not in the cart, right? So let's just put this over here, React fragment, because we will need this, and not is cart. So if it is not a cart component, will not display it. So over here it will display, and when we will display over here, we will give it an extra is cart property so that we can change accordingly. Okay. So first let's just handle this adding and removing from the cart functionality. So we'll add the on click, add to cart. Similarly, there is remove from cart. Remove from cart. Okay, so what are these functions going to do? So does anyone want to try, like how are we going to add it to cart? We have the name, we have the price, we have the image. How are we going to add this into the cart? We have the cart available over here, use state value. Over here we have this thing available. How are we going to do this? Anyone wants to give it a try? Over here. Hint, this is all that you require because to add all of this. Anyone wants to give it a try? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take the current cart, right? So if it is already in the cart, so before we do that, let's just check like how do we decide like which one should we display, like is this currently in the cart or not? So how do we do that? So how our cart is a object, right? Where is it? It is in our reducer, right? This is our cart. So when we add something, so let's say I'm just going to like my product names are just red, black, and blue. Okay, sorry, red, white, and blue. You can have another way of referencing all of this, but let's say there's black and the quantity is 100. So this is the way I'm going to be storing all of them in the uh, database, like black 100. Yeah, black 100 piece. Okay, that's too much. Like black 10 t-shirts. There's white 2 t-shirts. Like this way, I'm going to store it in the cart this way. Does anyone want to give a try, like how this is going to work? Let me tell you, it's not that difficult. Okay, no one wants to give it a try. Okay, so first we will check, okay, is this black, blue, or white accordingly, right? And so for that, what we need to do, let's just add another field into our database, which is like name. Instead of like this thing, we'll just add another field called as ID, black. There's ID white, ID of blue. Okay, you can put like you can use these IDs also, like that's also okay if you want, but I think this is more easier to understand, so I'll be going with this. You can use these IDs also. So how I'll show both ways, like how would you use this ID. So when you're getting these values, so with this thing you put something called as ID, right? And then you use item.id, so that's how you use that ID. But right now we have this ID coming, red, black, blue. We'll be using that one. Okay. All right. Let's just send all this also, the ID also as props. ID equals to ID. And in items, we are going to expect that ID. Okay. So for that, how will we check this is ID, sorry, cart dot object dot keys. So it's going to give me all the keys of cart dot contains no wait, that's the function name. Yeah, so I'll just do it in another way. So like cart and ID. So this is like if it is red, I'm going to access the cart red ID. So if it is not equal to null, right, it will give me something. So this means that it is in the cart. So if it is in the cart, I don't want to display this. Okay, so for this will be equal to null. And for this one, it's going to be ID not equal to null. Let's see. The cart is empty, so it should, so okay, it's the opposite way, not this way. Not equal to null and equal to. Right, now it's proper. Now if I click on add to cart, it should put black and one quantity in it. Okay, so let's put that. I'm going to dispatch a function. What's the action type? It's going to be set cart. Then second is the cart should be what? So the cart should be first the current cards spread out. And what's the second? Sorry, there's 3 dots for spread. And what else I need to do is I need to put ID. So it will be red, blue, or something, and I'll add one quantity in it. Okay. This is type Okay, right. Let's check this. Add to cart. It should update this. It's happening. Okay. It has this, but the check is not working properly for some reason. Okay. Card ID is not equal to null. So let's just check card ID. All right. So this is what it looks like. Okay. It's proper. What instead we can do is, because if this is working, I'll just put a ternary instead. So and it will be here. Empty. If I click on this, it will add the black and it should change this thing. Okay. So this works. So if I add it, it will put this into the cart. Okay. So this function is working. All right. So if there is some quantity of that ID in the cart, it will show remove from cart. Otherwise, it will ask you to remove it. Right. So let's put the remove function. So for that, I'm going to take let temporary card equal to card. Then I'm going to delete temporary card and ID. Okay, so that's going to remove it from this thing. So let me just show you what will happen. Temp card. If I try to remove this, it's going to remove black from it, right? And if I do this, it's going to remove that. So if I try again, nothing will happen, right? So what happens, like now this is going to be my new card, right? So let's dispatch another event. It's going to be type set card, and the new card is going to be the temporary card that we just updated. Okay, let's do this. Okay, there's blue, black, white. Let's remove, remove, remove. So add and remove functions are working properly now, right? So this is that. Okay, now let's come back. And as you can see, as we are adding, you can see that this is also getting updated on the side. So 3, 2, 1, because all of this is taking from the same context, all the values. Okay, now let's make the cart page. So for the cart page, I'm going to put the routing is from here. Okay, let's add a cart page. And for that, I'm going to create a new component called as cart.js, RAFCE. All right. This will be similar to your home. I'm just going to display a lot of the items. So I'll use the same thing, container. Sorry, requirement, just a div. And I'm going to return these things. Okay. So for the cart, what I'm going to do is these items, I have to show the cart accordingly. Okay. So for that, I have to loop through the cart. Cart will be coming from useStateValue, useStateValue, const cart and the dispatch. Okay. So cart dot map item. Let's just see what each item is. So what's displayed in the cart is the product and the quantity, but we'll also need the price. So we'll just update the function of adding and removing. So instead of putting this thing, instead of putting 1, we are going to put quantity is 1 and the price is price. Okay, right. And the check over here will be, instead of cart ID, it is going to be dot quantity instead. Okay, let's check both of them. What we did is basically we just changed the way we want to store the cart. Reading undefined quantity. Put a question mark over here. Yeah. Okay, now if I add it, remove it, add it, remove it. Yeah, it's still working perfectly, but we also now have keeping track of price when you're dealing with it, right? Price, and actually I'll put all of the data, which is price, name, and imager, all 3 of them. Okay, now let's loop through the cart. This is the item. This will have the image URL, then it will have name, it will have price, and it will have the quantity. Okay, next I'll return items, and I'm going to send all of them, image URL, name, price, quantity, right? this should have been in round brackets. Yes. And the quantity will be, we'll use the cart quantity when we want to use this. Okay. And one more thing that we'll add is cart. Is cart. And let's come back to items. Where is the error? Unexpected token, comma. Let's refresh. Yes, we are going to loop through cart. Okay. And this whole thing will be accessed from the cart. Sorry, not this way. Item. It will be the ID. And using this ID, we will be accessing all of this. Is cart ID dot image URL. Whole thing const equal to cart ID this is not displaying. Name, comma, image URL. Okay, now we can see we can like add or subtract, and this should come from where? It should come from this initial quantity should be coming from the cart quantity, right? Yes. So that's the total value. Okay. Now we have this. Now let's put the functionality on these two things. How will we do that? When we click on plus, it should be on click. It should set quantity to previous we're going to take the previous value plus 1. Okay, let's check. We did it in our first exercise. It's the same thing. Similarly, for minus, but there will be a check that will be going on that if the quantity is 1, if the quantity is 1, we are going to remove it, right? And how do we remove it? We're actually just going to take the same function. Where is it? From items, we are going to take remove cart function, and remove cart function takes the ID. Did we give the ID along? Okay, we did not. Let's give the ID also. Okay. Where is it? Oh yeah. Remove from cart. Let's call this, and this will be in an else. Let's try. Okay, minus. And if we do this, yes, this should turn to empty. And last thing in cart, this one, comma, sorry, it should be key. And I'm going to pass the key as well. So I get rid of this warning. And one last thing, if it is empty, right? If this will be empty, if the cart is empty, dot length is 0. So I'll just type out something. Typography, cart is empty. Okay, let's add to cart. Let's see this. Okay, all right. And if I remove, yes. Okay, all the functionality is working for the cart. Now final total for the whole cart. Now how will we calculate that? So I'm going to create a function, calculate total. For that, what we are going to do is we are going to loop through same way, object dot keys of cart. Going to go through it, and for not map, not for each, we are going to get the individual item. So item and index, we don't require it right now. So for each, we want to do something. So let's take a total value equals to 0. Okay. Each item, what does it have? It has the price and the quantity. Price and quantity. And this is going to give total plus equals to price into quantity, right? And this should be displayed over here. Let's see if this is being displayed. Calculate total. Yeah, we got to return it to printed. None. So why is that happening? It's because when we are trying to add or subtract these values, where is it? Over here. It's in items, yes. When we're trying to add and subtract, these values are not integer. We need to make them integer whenever we are dealing with this. For that, your initial value has to be a number, right? Quantity is 1, and when you try to remove it, you remove it completely. Add or subtract 1. Okay, it should work then. We are getting this value, so it's correct. It's going to have a total where I'm multiplying this. Let's see what the error, price and quantity. Okay, it doesn't have the price and quantity. So what's the issue? Value. All right, that's the problem. It's getting value as ID, not as the proper this thing. All right. So what if I change it to values instead of keys? Okay, now we get the values, right? So we get the price and the quantity. $300. Let's add some more items. 300, 100, 200. Yeah, they're getting 600. So the total function is also now working perfectly fine. Let's just put this in like something nice. So typography. Margin top of 2EH. What else? Total art value is rupees this much. Okay, and just let's just add some margin bottom also. All right. Okay, so all of this is done. Okay, so now what you can do is this whole system is done, right? Adding, removing from the cart, changing the values. Okay, why is this not adding? Price, quantity, why did it not change? So do wait a second. That's 600, and if I do this, it should become 700. What's the calculation error? Price is price of 1 unit. Quantity is quantity of oh, sorry. We never updated after this. We never updated the quantity over here, which is over. Yes, over here. After we set the quantity, right? What we need to do, we also need to set it in our cart, right? So for that, what are we going to do? Instead of taking this from here, so we are going to add another use effect. So use effect. So now if the quantity changes, okay, whenever the quantity changes, what we are going to do is we are going to dispatch an event of type set cart and we are going to set the cart to what? Let temporary cart equals to cart, and card at id dot quantity equals to new quantity, and sorry, temporary cart. Yes, and we'll put this as temporary cart. Okay, let's see if this thing works. Use effect. Okay, this thing doesn't work, so there's some sort of an problem. So when we are trying to set the quantity, we need to send a dispatch to dispatch of type set cart, and let temp cart equals to cart. And what else? We're going to change the temp cart at id dot quantity equals to quantity, sorry, -1, and let's just console log the temp cart. See, does it work properly? Let's add to cart plus plus plus, and when I click on minus, the black changes to 3 overall. Okay, so this thing is working. So I'll just set cart, and the cart will be temp cart. Okay, similarly, we need to do it for adding also. Over here, +1, stop logging. Okay, let's try. Okay, and let's try adding more items. Right, so okay. So the total cart value, everything is working fine. You can see that we can do this, and 600, 300, 900, 600. Yeah. So total cart value is correctly calculated now. Okay. Now this is where I am stopping. What you can do ahead, as I said, the Razorpay client, I had shown like how you can integrate it, the whole process of integrating that. Let me find that tab again. Where's the tab? Over here. Yes. Okay. What's the this thing? You need to create an order. you need to create a subsequent payment, and then you need to verify that payment. Okay, so these are the 3 steps you need to do whenever you're dealing with Razorpay. uh, so this is where I'm stopping. If there are any doubts, you can let me know. Okay, thank you.